What I'm interested in with the interactive fiction idea is like the looser kind of interactivity and elements you can have when you're writing. Like I always liked in the King's Quest games and things that you could kind of make anything happen. Anything was really possible. The list of verbs is broader than shoot, jump. And also just the literary nature. Writing books like The Wizard of Earthsea has this sort of brooding mood to it that's really very compelling and doesn't really go off any one thing, sound or visuals. It's sort of just the way she writes about moods and thoughts and just the words she uses, things you can't really get across any other way. And also the way things like these crazy Hugh cookbooks, the Chronicles of an Age of Darkness, you can just have really lunatic kind of crazy rampant things going on. It can be a lot of fun, and a bit like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or Red Dwarf or something. They can be a little bit literarily stimulating and sort of bizarre. So yeah, I'm interested in exploring that medium, even if it's just for fun. It'd be cool to make just a free text adventure interactive fiction thing and put it on my website or something. People can play it just sort of as an exercise as a game designer to interact with that medium, which is quite different than the general move things around, action game, shoot, aim sort of gameplay. And some of those things could maybe be brought back into an RPG design in a more traditional sense, or an adventure game. I like the idea of exploring in a kind of a low-tech way, interacting with characters, interacting with locations, interacting with objects, and how meaning is made beyond just how many of them you've got, whether you've got this gun or this weapon. It's more the meaning comes from what other things do you associate with that object in a story context. Like how is a certain interaction or possession meaningful dramatically to the story? Because I think that when it comes to mature game content and adult games and sort of more artistic games, that's actually what's important, and that's what people care about, not ammo counts and stuff, which are great strategically and in an action setting, and to get to the end of an action level is still exciting and stimulating, but I'd like to explore, now that I'm an older player myself, I'm more interested in engaging with a game if I think it has some artistic merit and some sort of dramatic tension, rather than purely a sort of a gameplay tension. So that's what I hope to get out of exploring the medium, and currently I've just been kind of just making a stupid little test game, but I'd be interested to try to make something that explores some of the traditional things in games, like day and night, location, whether you've got access to certain areas, but also things that are maybe you can do in a more interesting way, just in a textual sense, like things you can do with the passing of time, and also and the way that you all of the things that you can let exist between the cracks and can happen unseen or go unnoticed until you explore in a certain way to find secret things or hidden things or things that weren't mentioned but are there, but you have to find. They're all done in a very different way in text adventure games, where nothing is seen until you discover it through text, and the author has their own sort of arbitrary way of being able to reveal things based on sort of arbitrary triggering. It's not like tap each section of the wall to look for a hidden door, or make sure an area is lit and nearby if you want to find information of such and such a resolution. It's more like you can make connections with the audience in any way. Obviously there's some obligation to do it in a consistent way that you can that the audience could expect to reveal a certain sort of information, but you can also surprise them and make up rules as you go along that don't have to rely on a game system consistency. You just have to allow it to happen logically based on whatever rules you want in your interactive system. Also, there's a lot of problems with it, like there's just one blessed path. You're meant to do this, then do that, then do this. Everything else that you do is sort of a waste of time or a distraction, or gets a failed response of, I don't understand that. I like the idea of having a blessed path. Ideally, having a blessed path, but having other paths that are viable as side stories, or even another way to get from here to here, or you can go like this and get to there, to see if that is something I can do or whether it's difficult, and to also put the effort into making the world feel like there's viable and interesting and enlightening responses to various things the player does that aren't essential, but they're all relevant and still support the feel of the story, which is the purpose of someone engaging with the game, and the purpose of me creating it is that you're engaging with a place and with a feel, and to be able to consistently and richly have responses that support this world, that as much as the player wants to interact with it, they can, and they'll get more richness out of it simply even just through observing certain things in the room or trying certain interactions. I think that's the challenge of good interactive writing, and it's often something that's not done very well, is that the mood is often a bit just arbitrary and flippant, sort of just jokey, like I always found the Zork games overly arbitrary and silly. I'd rather that it could have some of that liveliness, but just be more consistent with the voice of the world, or the author, or whatever the voice is defined by. And also, often they're a bit weak in that there's a blessed path, and you can type in all sorts of other things, and the game is oblivious to your attempts to interact in that way, which I think it's important to do testing with people and just see what they try to do and make sure you support that, even if it's with a fairly abrupt sort of response. That's fine and probably good in a lot of cases. If it's not a fruitful path to take, give an abrupt response, but make it applicable to the situation so that the player always feels like the world is responding to you, and everything you type in gets a response that is fair and enlightening about the world, and often also helps to hint at where the blessed action may be, so give them hints about where to go. So it's a bit of a distraction. I'm not sure how you would go about releasing such a game in a way that was that was monetarily beneficial, that you could actually support yourself with, but maybe it's fun to approach it without that goal, and just it's just a research project, and it's just something fun, and the goal would be to make something that people like, and that maybe it's even a nice news story that you could have on your blog and have it on your website, and people come just to check that out, because it could also enter it in the fiction writing competition. I can't remember what it's called, but there is one that I checked out some entries, and there was some quite interesting stuff on there, so it'd be good to engage with the scene a bit. There's some interesting people out there like Emily Short and people doing interesting stuff in the field. So these are a few of my favourite Sierra games. King's Quest series is a bottler. Bit of Leisure Suit Larry, Police Quest. Krondor was really inspiring RPG for me. I just like the tone of the writing in these games. King's Quest 3. There's Roberta. I like the way she approached her world, and I feel like King's Quest 3 was actually in a way a high point because it had the time sort of based gameplay. It had this making of spells in Manannan's laboratory, which was very sort of tense and moody. That was really cool. Yeah, and a great sort of sense of place. It was much less arbitrary than the earlier King's Quest. An interesting protagonist.